Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
Great to be here.
Today we're taking a close look at Intel Corporation and really tackling that big question lots of people are asking. Is Intel a good time to buy now?
Yeah, it's a complex picture with them right now. Lots going on.
Absolutely. We're going to sift through the latest data, analyst insights, market trends, just to help you understand what's really happening with this, well, iconic tech giant. Before we really unpack the specifics, if you find value in our discussions, please think about subscribing, maybe liking this analysis, and leaving us a comment.
Yeah, your engagement really helps us bring more of these analyses to you.
It does. And hey, if there's a specific company you'd like us to look into, just drop its name in the comments below. We're definitely listening.
And you can also support the show by considering buying us a coffee. We appreciate it.
We do indeed. Okay, let's get into it. Intel. I mean, the name's been synonymous with computing for decades, right? Shaping our whole digital world.
Totally. Foundation stuff.
But it's also a company that's, well, in the middle of a massive, really ambitious transformation.
Huge transition, yeah.
We've gathered some, frankly, fascinating source material to explore where they stand now, their future potential, and, of course, the significant challenges ahead. Our mission here is really to distill all this information so you walk away feeling truly well-informed.
Let's do it.
Okay, so to kick things off, we need a clear picture of where Intel stands today. Let's dig into the latest financial fundamentals, kind of see the bedrock of their operations. What are the numbers telling us about Intel's health right now?
Okay, so if we look at the big picture, Intel's 2024 performance, total revenue came in at $54.2 billion. Now, that is a slight dip from $56.6 billion in 2023.
Okay, a dip, so headwinds there.
Yeah, it points to, ongoing industry headwinds, competition is fierce. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite that dip in revenue, their gross margin for 2024 actually improved.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it went up to 41.9% from 39.8% in 2023. So it's a positive signal, right? It indicates maybe some recovery in profitability, perhaps better cost control, maybe a different product mix, even in this tough market.
That makes sense.
And net income was $8.0 billion, just a tiny bit shy of the $8.1 billion the year before. So pretty stable there on the bottom line, despite the revenue dip.
That's a really crucial distinction. A dip in revenue might look concerning at first glance, but that improving gross margin, it suggests there's some underlying strength maybe in their operations.
Absolutely. They're navigating those headwinds, but maybe, like you said, with a tighter ship.
So what about their overall financial stability, like their debt, their cash position? That's always important.
Right. So when we look at financial health, Intel's total debt stands at about $38.7 billion.
Okay, that's a big number.
It is a substantial figure, yeah.
Okay.
But it's balanced by $28.4 billion in cash and cash equivalents. So they have a good chunk of cash on hand.
Right.
Their operating cash flow for 2024 was $16.2 billion, and free cash flow came in at $7.2 billion. Now, that free cash flow number, that's the money left over after they pay for essential capital expenditures.
And they're spending a lot on that, right? Building fabs.
Exactly. That number reflects those massive investments they're pouring into expanding manufacturing capacity, building those new facilities, the fabs.
Okay.
And what's really insightful here, I think, is how these debt levels, even though they're large, are generally considered manageable.
How so?
Well, especially when you factor in the recent, very significant U.S. government investments and grants. We're talking about that $8.9 billion equity-tied grant through the CHIPS Act.
The CHIPS Act money.
Precisely. That's the government's big push for domestic semiconductor manufacturing. This grant, it really bolsters their liquidity. It essentially de-risks a big chunk of their huge capital spending plans.
So it gives them breathing room.
Yeah, it gives them a strategic runway to execute that foundry vision without the immediate intense pressure on their balance sheet that purely commercial funding would bring. It translates into, greater long-term stability and a better competitive posture.
So it's not just the raw numbers, it's the context. That government backing seems like, well, a potential game changer for their financial flexibility.
It really is.
But, the tech landscape is a battleground, always changing. How does Intel truly stack up against its competitors in this market, especially with this whole turnaround strategy?
That's the key question, isn't it? Intel holds a really critical and I'd say unique competitive position. They're the only U.S.-based company that has both leading-edge logic R&D and high-volume manufacturing capabilities.
The only one in the U.S. doing both at that level.
The only one. And that's not just, a talking point. It's viewed as a strategic national asset. They're aggressively investing in their foundry services.
Meaning making chips for other companies, not just themselves.
Exactly. So they're aiming to make chips for others, directly challenging the giants like TSMC and Samsung.
Need targets.
Huge targets. Their advantages are pretty clear. They've got advanced process technology, specifically pushing their Intel 18A node.
18A.
Yeah.
This is super small, cutting-edge stuff.
Yeah, where 18A refers to that next-gen nanometer process.
Yeah.
It's crucial for performance. They also have those strong government partnerships we just talked about, and just the sheer scale of their domestic manufacturing footprint.
That distinction, being the only U.S. company doing that leading-edge manufacturing, that feels vital, especially now with all the geopolitical focus on supply chains.
Absolutely vital.
But just because you have a strong position doesn't mean it's an easy fight. What are the big hurdles they're facing from rivals?
Well, this raises an important point. Despite that unique position, they face considerable challenges. Historically, they've struggled with delays in process migration.
Right, getting the next generation out on time.
Exactly. Getting those new chips out efficiently and on schedule, that allowed competitors to gain ground. And the competition now is just intense.
Who are the main threats?
Well, in client and server chips, you've got AMD, which has been incredibly innovative and has taken market share.
Yeah, they've been strong.
And there's NVIDIA just dominating the AI chip space, which is a market Intel desperately wants a bigger piece of.
Everyone wants a piece of AI.
Everyone. And we can't forget the growing influence of ARM-based designs. Those are powering everything from smartphones to Apple's M-series chips in laptops now. It's a different architectural challenge altogether.
Wow.
So yeah, their position is unique, but the fight for market share is happening on multiple fronts. It's fierce.
It really sounds like they're fighting a multi-front war, balancing their own innovation with the massive scale of manufacturing. Okay, so with that fundamental overview, finances, competition, how are investors actually valuing Intel right now? What's the market saying?
Okay, valuation. Looking at the metrics, Intel currently trades at a notable discount compared to industry averages.
A discount, meaning cheaper.
Yeah, cheaper based on standard metrics. For instance, their price to earnings, the TTM or trailing 12 months PE, is around 21.1. The industry average is closer to 25.5.
Okay.
Similarly, their price to sales is 2.3, while the industry average is 4.1, and price to book is 1.9 versus 3.2 for the industry.
So quite a bit lower across the board. Why is that?
Well, this discount is generally attributed to lower growth rates compared to some of those high-flying competitors, and also those lingering execution risks we mentioned. Those past delays kind of cast a shadow.
Makes sense.
Their forward PE, looking ahead based on analyst consensus, is down in the low 18s.
So this discount tells us the market isn't fully buying into the turnaround story yet. It's basically giving you, the listener, a chance to get in at a lower price if you believe they can actually pull off this strategy.
That's a good way to put it. There's skepticism priced in.
What does your own analysis, like a discounted cash flow model, suggest about their intrinsic value?
Right. So our DCF analysis, which tries to estimate value based on projected future cash flows, it puts Intel's value somewhere between $28 last and $34 per share.
Okay, and where's the stock trading now, assuming it's near or below this range for context?
We'll implicitly compare current price to this range. That range assumes a moderate revenue rebound and a recovery in their profit margins by, say, fiscal year 2027. So it suggests there's a moderate upside potential if, and it's a big if, Intel successfully executes on this huge foundry and AI strategy.
So potential upside, but heavily dependent on execution.
Exactly. It's a valuation that prices in both the current challenges and the potential reward if they transform successfully.
All right, let's shift gears a bit to the recent past. What's been the buzz around Intel lately? There's been a lot of news, especially about those government partnerships you mentioned. Can you walk us through that sort of whirlwind of activity?
Absolutely. It's been busy. The most significant highlight, no question, is the CHPS Act grant and the U.S. government's equity investment.
Right, the big money.
Yeah. The government initially announced an $8.9 billion investment in Intel common stock to really accelerate that domestic semiconductor expansion. What's crucial to understand is how this finalized. It sort of broke into two parts. A direct acquisition of roughly 9.9 to 10% of Intel.
So the government owns a piece of Intel now.
A significant piece, yeah. That represented a $5.7 billion direct equity investment. And then the remaining portion is tied to grants for specific projects. So it's not just a handout, it's really a strategic partnership, recognizing Intel's role in national security.
That's a huge vote of confidence or maybe strategic necessity from the government.
Definitely. And then moving to more recent corporate news, back in July 2025, Intel reported their Q2 results. They actually exceeded the high end of their own guidance.
That's good news.
It was welcome news, yeah. Signaled some operational efficiency. However, right around the same time, they also announced a pretty significant workforce reduction.
Oh, layoffs.
Yeah, about 15%, and they streamlined management layers by roughly 50%, aiming for a global workforce of about 75,000 by the end of the year.
Wow, that's major restructuring.
It is, and this came along with a return to office policies starting in September. All of it positioned as, organizational efficiency, cost-saving measures needed for this big long-term transformation.
Okay, so a lot happening at once. Government backing, better than expected earnings, but also substantial layoffs. What really stands out to you about how the market reacted to all this? Was it clearly positive or more murky?
It was definitely more nuanced, I'd say. What's insightful is that even after that partial government funding was confirmed in August, Intel's stock actually saw a slight slide.
Really? Why?
Well, it wasn't necessarily a rejection of the funding itself. I think concerns lingered about the long-term strategic implications, maybe the regulatory oversight that comes with a deal this big, especially for the part of the initial $11 billion announcement that was still being finalized.
Right.
Investors were trying to digest what this level of government entanglement might mean for Intel's agility down the road.
That makes sense. Strings attached, perhaps?
Could be. And adding to their financial strength, they also secured an additional $2 billion in equity investment, this time from SoftBank.
Oh, SoftBank too.
Yeah, further reinforcing their balance sheet and, you could argue, providing some external validation of their strategy from a major tech investor.
Okay. And analysts, insiders, what are they saying or doing?
Well, following those Q2 earnings, analyst ratings became quite mixed. You saw ongoing debate about management effectiveness, basically asking if they can navigate all these complex changes successfully.
Still divided opinions.
Very much so. And looking at insider Form 4 filings, that's the public disclosure when executives buy or sell stock, we saw modest selling, but it mostly looked like it was for tax purposes, no significant accumulation, which you might hope to see if insiders were super bullish.
Right. No big buys.
No big buys reported. Social sentiment, though, like chatter online, remains cautiously positive, mostly driven, I think, by that government investment news and the high hopes for Intel's growth in AI and foundry services. So yeah, a very mixed bag of signals overall.
Okay. Lots of moving pieces, creating both opportunity and, well, uncertainty. Let's look forward then. What should investors really be watching for? Short term, long term? What are the catalysts, the potential pitfalls?
Okay, short term. The next big thing is the Q3 2025 earnings report. That's expected around October 22nd, 2025.
What are you looking for there?
We'll be watching closely for updates on margins, of course, any initial signs of foundry revenue starting to kick in, and how effectively they're actually deploying those Shia PSAC funds.
Okay, earnings are key. Anything else near term?
Yeah, a couple of market events. ETF quarterly rebalancing around October 2nd. Sometimes that can cause temporary price moves as funds adjust holdings.
Right.
And the institutional Form 13F filing window in November. That's when we get to see what the big institutions, the hedge funds, the pension funds have been buying or selling. Always interesting.
Gives you a sense of the smart money.
Kind of, yeah. And then we also have the holiday hardware demand outlook, probably around late November, November 22nd or so. That gives us a read on consumer spending for PCs, devices using their chips.
Okay, got it. And longer term, what are the big milestones?
Long term, the really significant catalysts are the completion of those new fabs and capacity expansions in Arizona and Ohio.
The big building projects.
Exactly. These are massive multi-billion-dollar projects. They're absolutely crucial for Intel's medium-term growth and their ability to compete in the foundry market against TSMC. Their success here is paramount.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. We're also looking for those AI product launches expected in late 2025 and into 2026. New AI accelerators, new processors designed to really challenge NVIDIA.
Taking the fight to NVIDIA.
That's the goal. And finally, just broader macro shifts, that continued geopolitical support for domestic semiconductor production that will likely keep playing into their strategic advantage.
Those long-term catalysts definitely paint a picture of a company building for the future. But this raises the important question again. What are the biggest hurdles? What could stop them from achieving that vision?
Right, the risks. The main stock-specific risks, I'd say, include execution delays in that manufacturing ramp-up. Building and bringing these incredibly advanced fabs online is unbelievably complex. Any missteps, any delays could be really costly, both financially and competitively.
Execution, execution,
It
execution.
really is key. They also face that intense, relentless competition from TSMC and Samsung. These guys are formidable players in advanced chip making, and they are not standing still either.
Always innovating.
Always. There's also the risk of potentially slow adoption of their foundry services by third-party customers. They have to convince companies, some of whom might be competitors in other areas, to trust Intel with their critical chip designs. That's a sales job.
Building trust takes time.
It does. And then the structure of those government disbursements, the compliance rules under the Sheet Trip PS Act, those also present specific administrative and, financial risks. You got to follow the rules when you take government money.
Bureaucracy.
Can be, yeah. And then just broadly, the whole semiconductor sector is still susceptible to cycles, right?
Yeah.
Supply chain disruptions, we've seen those. And just incredibly rapid technological change. It's a high-stakes environment all around.
It really sounds like execution is everything for Intel right now. Okay, beyond the official announcements, beyond the known risks, are there any whispers? Any, speculative catalysts out there that could dramatically shift Intel's trajectory, for better or worse?
Well, there's certainly chatter in the market, as always. Speculation persists that maybe the U.S. government might increase its equity stake even further if Intel hits certain additional Cheat Sheet PS Act performance benchmarks. That could mean another substantial capital injection.
More government money.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. We're also hearing rumors, and these are just rumors, about a possible spin-off or joint venture of Intel's domestic foundry business.
Spin off the foundry part. Why?
Well, especially given how much government involvement there is now, the thinking is maybe a separate entity could attract more dedicated capital, maybe offer customers more confidence that they aren't competing directly with Intel's own chip product lines. It could simplify things.
Interesting. Strategic possibility.
Definitely something being talked about. Unconfirmed reports also suggest Intel might try to accelerate the launch of its next-gen AI accelerators, try to grab more of that booming market sooner rather than later.
Makes sense if they can do it.
If they can, yeah. And analysts are always speculating about the possibility of Intel unveiling some new tech partnership, maybe in cutting-edge areas like quantum computing or advanced packaging techniques. That could open up totally new revenue streams down the line.
Okay, so a lot of potential wildcards there that could either really boost them or, I suppose, complicate things further.
Yeah.
This brings us to the so what moment for you, the listener. Trying to make sense of Intel's current spot, its future potential. What's the bottom line here?
I think the bottom line is that Intel is absolutely in a period of high transformation. You've got that substantial federal investment, which is huge, and significant workforce streamlining, acting as key drivers. Now, risk factors definitely remain elevated, challenging margins in some areas, that intense competition.
Right.
But this significant government backing, combined with institutional interests like from SoftBank and their unique domestic manufacturing capabilities, it provides a foundation for, I'd say, cautious optimism. It's really the story of a legacy giant attempting a very complex, very high-stakes pivot.
Okay, so to summarize then, our analysis points to Intel's strengths being that substantial government backing, the strong liquidity helped by that funding, and a clear competitive resurgence strategy focused on foundry and AI. And it's currently available at a discounted valuation compared to peers. The weaknesses, though, are pretty clear too. Operational execution uncertainties, can they pull it off? A track record, recently anyway, of modest top-line growth and just fierce, relentless competition from AMD, TSMC, Samsung, and the whole ARM ecosystem.
That sums it up well.
So, investment horizon. Who is Intel potentially right for?
Given these big transformative projects in foundry and AI, which will honestly take years to fully materialize and show results, Intel seems better suited for a long-term investment horizon.
Patience required.
Patience is definitely required. For those looking maybe for shorter-term gains, well, trading might find opportunities in the volatility around those key catalysts we talked about, earnings reports, regulatory news, but that definitely comes with higher risk.
Okay. That brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider today. Given Intel's unique position, the only U.S. company with that leading-edge manufacturing, plus this massive government investment, how much of its future success will truly hinge on its own innovation versus, say, geopolitical strategy and national security interests?
That's a great question.
Is Intel becoming something more like a strategic national asset, maybe even a quasi-public utility in this critical industry, rather than just a pure tech stock driven solely by market forces? What stands out to you about Intel's potential path forward? Something to think about.
Definitely something to mull over.
Thank you for joining us on Investing Talk Podcast. We really hope this analysis of Intel Corporation has given you some valuable insights.
Hope it's helpful.
We look forward to exploring more companies with you next time.